The truth is that it's hardworking New Yorkers who are using our subways and our buses and our transit system and our sidewalks more than any other New Yorkers. It's hardworking New Yorkers who day in and day out are going to work and using our public transit system and commuting around the city who are most likely to get injured in an accident on the sidewalks or in the transit system. And it's those folks, hardworking New Yorkers, who are impacted the most if they get hurt and they can't work and support their families. And that's why it's important, if you get injured on a city sidewalk, on a public sidewalk, in the transit system, to make sure your incident is documented and reported at the scene. So if, God forbid, you have an injury that's ongoing, that prevents you from going to work and providing for your family, a legal claim can be made, and there's evidence to show that you fell and you were injured where you said you were injured and at the time you were injured. There's ample evidence to show that the accident happened the way you described it, and there's evidence to support your account of what occurred. If you're a pedestrian in New York City and you cross the street outside the crosswalk, someplace in the middle of the street, for example, and you get hit by a car, there's going to be a question legally whether you caused or contributed to your own accident. It's not automatic that the car's at fault if the pedestrian is outside the crosswalk. But it's a very different situation if a pedestrian is crossing the street in the crosswalk. If you're crossing the street in the crosswalk and a car enters the crosswalk and hits you, there's a presumption legally that the car that struck you in the crosswalk is at fault, if not entirely at fault. And it's very difficult for the vehicle or their attorneys or their insurance company to say that the pedestrian somehow caused the accident if they are in the crosswalk when they're crossing. In New York City, everybody's always in a rush, and everybody's always trying to get from point A to point B in the quickest and most direct way. We as New Yorkers, we're constantly crossing the street all over the place. We cross in the middle of the block, on the angles of the block, everywhere. But the truth is that if you cross the street outside the crosswalk, if you're crossing the street where vehicles are, any place outside the designated crosswalk, and you get hit by a car, there's going to be a serious question as to whether you, the pedestrian, caused or contributed to your accident. It's not automatic in that situation that the car's responsible. On the contrary, when a pedestrian crosses the street outside the crosswalk, there's always a significant question as to whether the pedestrian caused or in some significant way contributed to his or her own accident. What we urge people to do is take the extra few seconds, go to the crosswalk, wait for the walk signal, and cross in the crosswalk. It's the safest thing to do. And if, God forbid, a car enters the crosswalk and strikes you, the law is on your side. We represented a lady who lived in Upper Manhattan, and she worked as a nanny in Park Slope, Brooklyn. She had a long commute. She would travel every day by subway from Upper Manhattan all the way down to Park Slope, Brooklyn, to work for this family, to care for their young child. Both parents worked, and during the daytime, she took care of their boy, their young child. And one day, she was crossing one of the streets near their home in Park Slope. She had the baby carriage. She was pushing the carriage with the boy inside. And a van made a left turn from the other street and came into the crosswalk. And just like sort of out of a movie, an instant before the van struck her, she saw it coming and she pushed the carriage out of the way so that the kid wouldn't be hit, so the carriage wouldn't be hit. But she got hit. A whole bunch of people came to the scene immediately. An ambulance was called, the family was called, and she was taken by ambulance to the hospital. We represented her in that case against the van. And because she was crossing in the crosswalk, we were able to establish pretty early in the case that the driver of the van was 100% responsible for the collision and for her injuries. So the case proceeded only on the question of injuries after that, with no issue about the fault of the van driver.